Hello friends, welcome to C full course in 10 days using W3Schools website. My name is Dr. Zishan Bhatti and today is day number 5 of learning C# using W3Schools website as a reference material here on my channel called Learn with W3Schools. In the last class, we talked about how we take input from the user and what are various different C# operators, including arithmetic, assignment, and comparison. Again, the link is below, or you can click on the I icon to access that tutorial if you already haven't watched it. Today, we're going to discuss more about the math class. What is a math class, how we use math and strings and booleans in C#. Quick disclaimer, this is not an official W3Schools website tutorial, nor is it being sponsored by them. I just love using this website and I'm just using it for a reference notes. Before we go further, if you still haven't subscribed this channel and here for the first time or watching this video again, but not subscribed, please do. Leave a comment and don't forget to like this video. This helps and encourages a lot and motivates us to make more videos regularly. So now, without further ado, let's learn what C# math class does for us.
Now, C# math class. What do we exactly mean by C# math class? Well, a math class is like a utility class. It's like a library that again has been pre-built by the good people of C# and .NET at the Microsoft. And what this class contains is certain mathematical functions that you use within your code almost most regularly. Okay, so knowing about this class is quite useful. Similar to C math, there are many other library files as well that we would be using time to time, and sometimes we need to explore to do a particular task what library file exists. Okay, so this is considered as one of the library files, math, and it has mathematical functions that we use and they perform a specific task. Functions like cosine, sine, theta, tangent theta, maximum, minimum values, random values, xyz, xyz. Okay, so C# math class has many methods that allows you to perform mathematical tasks on various different numbers. Math class such as math.max takes two arguments, x and y. Okay, so now this becomes the syntax. So we use math, which is a class name, and this class contains a method called .max, similar to console and other methods we have been using. So basically, we access this math class and we say inside the math class, we have a maximum method. This method syntax is that it takes two arguments and then it will determine which number is the maximum amongst it. So if I use them, you see we'll have this code. If I just zoom into this guy a little bit so we can see it better. So we say use system, using system, namespace, my application, class program, and then console.writeln maximum method. What this does is now that it determines that amongst this 5 and 10, which number is the bigger number. Sometimes we need to find out that when the user enters a value, which number is bigger and small. So we use a mathematical function called max inside a math class and we process it. You can use it in a similar manner. So for example, I can say integer bigger number is equals to, and I can use math.max and I can say, listen, find out which number is bigger from 42 to 89. Okay, semicolon. Now, why did we give this two arguments? Because the function syntax defines it that, hey, listen, this takes two arguments and then it will determine which number is the maximum. And this method automatically does that. Okay, we can write our own code to do that, but this method automatically does that. Then it says this method exists in the math class. So what's the basic second logic is that when we execute this method, it's going to find out which number is bigger and then it's going to return a value. Okay, so whenever we do a programming, you have to keep in mind that there are certain methods that will just perform a certain task. For example, console.writeln. Console.writeln is a method that prints something on the console. That's it. Gone. In this case, math.max is a method that performs finds out which number is bigger, performs a calculation, and then returns a reply. So we need to receive that reply as well. Okay, so that's why here I have written integer, bigger number. This number now becomes a variable which will have this value or with this number which is bigger from here. Similarly, we have used here in console.println. Okay, writeln. This writeln method will actually receive. So whatever answer is replied from here will be received by writeln method directly in their brackets and will be printed on the console. So there are two ways of doing it. One, you receive an answer in a variable and then use that variable to print it or do any operation on it. Second, sometimes just to test a code, we can directly print that method value inside our code. Okay, such as another method. So writeln is a method and we are passing it as an argument, another method. So this method will perform its task, return a value that will again be read by writeln and print on the console. Okay, so don't confuse with that. So this is again pretty legitimate, meaning that we are using a method inside a another method as an argument. Now, so similarly, there are many other methods that perform the functions within our C# class. So we have math.minimum, where what math.minimum does, again, the name is quite evident. It finds out the minimum value amongst the two values that they pass. Then you can use math.sqrt. It finds out the square root of a given number. Okay, so whatever number you find, if you want to find out the square root, you basically use this method. So in our case, for example, we come back here and I said, okay, let's just use console dot write line, and then we provide again same thing, math class, and I want to write sqrt bracket start bracket close and then bracket close and then semicolon. What this defines, now when the number, so for example, if I write 49, run this code, is going to go inside the math class, find out this method sqrt and tries to do the mathematical calculation for that, and we got an error, system.math does not contain a definition for sqrt. What happened? Capital S. See, so we have a capital S in the method, and I apparently use the small s. So this is, again, be very careful with respect to errors. If you write a code, sometimes it's a common thing, we mistakes. So make sure you read the error description. When you do that, it says that the system does not contain sqrt, means there's something wrong with the sqrt function that I've used. So I come back to my code, I check, sqrt, I've done it. It should be the same, spelling should be okay, but then check the resources. That's why we love W3Schools, because it has all the resources available. On this website, you can say, S is capital, and in my code, actually, I wrote S as a small one. Okay, so make sure that you use that. So in coming here, I change this to capital S, and now I run the code. And here we go. So we have a value printed on the screen. Okay, 7 is the sqrt, and then you can use it, for example, something like that. The sqr square root of number 7 is something like that. Okay, and then you can say, listen, I want this to be printed, and then we add a plus sign. So means this becomes a string plus the answer that is returned by this math.sqrt. So if you run the code again, now what it's going to do is going to attach this string with the answer of this. So now the square root of number 7 is, oh sorry, 7 of 49, right? So for example, if you give it 49, so it will say the number 49 is 7 or whatever you want. So you can use this in a way. So I'm just trying to explain that you have a method, and you can use a method with a string inside another method. So remember, write-ln is a method, and inside the method we have a string which is concatenating or joining to a reply that is returned by another method. So math.sqrt is a function, is a method that performs the square root, and whatever is the answer that is returned by it will then be added to this string, which then is collectively printed on our console using this another method. It's like nesting one thing into another. Then similarly, we have many other functions. Okay, so we have math.absolute values, finding the absolute value of a number. Math.round will basically rounds up to the nearest whole number. Quite self-explanatory, these things. And there are few other methods that exist within our math class. So if you go into the documentation and read the documentation and go into details of this, I think there is a reference here somewhere where we have the whole details of various different methods that we can use in from our math class. Okay, or I will point you to the right documentation. So there are many other things that we can do with the math class. Understand? So this is how, in other words, we use math and some functions to perform operations on data. Similarly, moving forward, we have something called string. Now, string is quite amazing. String has many uses within C# and in general. Okay? So strings are used for storing text. That's a plain simple thing. Anything you write within inverted quotation marks is basically considered as a string. Double inverted quotation marks having multiple number of text. Even numbers would consider string if you write it inside the double quotation marks. String variable contains a collection of characters surrounded by a double quotes. So do always keep in mind that. Creating a variable of type string and assign it a value. So here we create s with a small s, string, and we create a variable is equals to hello world. This becomes my string. A string variable can contain many words if you want. So we can have nice to meet you, meaning that string, we create a variable's greetings, and we use this as a. Okay, so if I execute this code, and let me just kill all other things. I think we should already done that. Bum, 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 bum. Just simplify the code here, and execute this thing. So now we have various different strings available to us. So we say, hey, string hello, and we say string 2, nice to meet you. So this again is completely valid. And then we can come here and say console.writeln greetings. It's going to print whatever string we have written here. It's going to be printed. And then we can write console.writeLn greeting 2. It's going to print nice to meet you. We can even say, for example, console.writ, right line, and we can say print the greeting hello, and then do a plus and say please subscribe. Okay, and close this. Now what we're doing is we're taking one string, which is hello, and then we add the plus because this is already a string. So whenever we use a string at any of the left or right hand side of the arithmetic operator plus, it behaves like a concatenation or joining operator. It's going to join the output of this string with the option of this script. Please subscribe. So if we run the code now, it's going to say hello, please subscribe. Hello, please subscribe. Do that if you're up till here. Okay, so this is how strings basically simply work. Now there are various different methods that are inherently built within the string. Okay, let me explain. String in C# is actually an object. Okay, we have not talked extensively about objects at this moment up till this point because we will going to do in this later chapters. But string in a C# is actually an object which contains properties and methods that can perform certain operations on a string. Meaning that when you create a string, by default, this string behaves like an object. And this object now internally already has multiple methods that you can use directly without any other thing. When we created this string, okay, greeting, now this greeting is considered as a string object. We refer it to as a string object. By an object meaning that because this is an object, it is not just containing this text here. It contains information on various different methods of a string that can be used on this thing as well. By creating an object, you're not only creating data type, but you're also associating various different methods that you can use on this one. So it's a double package that you get. Okay, this is what the object-oriented language teaches us. So a string internally actually is what we call an object. So for example, the length of a string can be found using the length property. Okay, so now when we write this code here, we come back this one. Let's try this one out. Let's see what's happening here. So we say, okay, we created a string a, b, c, d, e, f, g, up to z, and then we use something called console.writeLn. The length of a string is, again, we write a string here, plus, then we say text.length. Now what we did here is, we created this text variable of a string type. We gave it a some number of string. Said, okay, perfect. Then we used text variable dot length as a method for this string class. We have not declared it, we have not defined it, and do keep note that there is no round brackets around it as well. Okay, because this is a built-in method and with capital L, this method is built in because text internally is now handled as an object, and because this is an object, there is a string class that has been defined by the system internally. So there's a class such as this class already existing that contains our string class, and that class contains various different methods. So whenever you declare a string object, it becomes part of that string, and hence it's able to use methods inside it. Okay, so it automatically inherits all the methods of that string class. One of those methods is length. This length specifically is without brackets, and what it will do, it will tell you count the number of characters. So this is what key thing about strings we need to understand. There are various other methods that we can use. So there are many string methods available. For example, to upper, to lower, which returns a copy of the string converted to uppercase or lowercase. So we can use string text hello world, and we can say to uppercase, it will convert the entire string into uppercase, or we can say console.lowercase, and it's going to convert entire string into a lowercase. Understand? Simple as that. So this becomes methods. So there are multiple different methods that we can use with strings that allows us to operate on it and perform multiple different functions. Okay, let's move on to C# Booleans now. What do we mean by Booleans? Well, very simply, C# Booleans are very often in programming. You will use this on data types, especially on if, else, switch, while loop conditions. These Booleans refer to, simply speaking, true and false. Some programming tell it yes or no, on or off, but in general, mostly we refer it to as true and false. So C# Boolean is a data type bool which can take either true or false, as simple as that. It can take either true or false. Only these two values, no other options are available. Booleans internally are represented with one bit of value. So it occupies only one bit when we declare this in a memory, and that one bit basically will only have either true value or false value. True internally is represented as 1 and false is represented as 0. That's why one bit we know in memory can only contain 1 or 0. So if it's 1 means it's true, it means 1. If it's false means it's 0, or it's 0 it means false. It's reciprocal. So a Boolean value is declared with a bool keyword and can only take either true or false. Whenever we declare a variable with a bool, is C# fun is equals to true. Now we declare a variable, and this variable is holding a value called true, and this Boolean variable is holding a value called false. So this is a data type that's basically doing exactly the same thing. Why we exactly need this Boolean when we only need true and false and we can write it directly? Because internally memory needs to understand what is a true value, what is a false value, how to handle this true value, true and false expressions. Because this true and false is used in our various different evaluation purpose. So for example, whenever we write a conditional expression such as x is greater than y, okay, so when we write it, the answer is either true or false, but that answer needs to be saved in a memory, and then memory needs to know that what type of data I am saving. So that is why we use Boolean. So we tell the memory that, hey, listen, this answer is either true or answer is false based on the expression, and this true and false is of type Boolean. Only then the memory will be able to store one bit and save that answer inside the one bit. In memory, the word true is not saved in terms of its text form. Okay, the word true in a string form is not saved. It's always saved in either one value, and false is saved as a 0 value. That's it. So that's why it only occupies one bit in memory. So memory only will save 0 or 1. In general, whenever we process this data through a programming, our C# will return either true and false. It will automatically convert 1 into 0, 1 into true, and 0 into false. So because of the memory, we need to use this Boolean data type. Okay, and for example, when we write 10 is greater than 9, this returns true because 10 is greater than 9. We can use this comparison directly, but inside the memory, it again needs to know which type of data this is, because the true value will be saved in memory first before it is sent for an output. And when it is still sent for an output, means that the system needs to know that what type of data I'm sending to the particular console. So that's why it will consider this as a Boolean data type inside our memory. Okay, this Boolean, and it's written through every expression. So every expression that we write, Boolean expression, every conditional operator that we use, every logical operator we use will return this Boolean data type. Okay, so this we talked about this operators here in terms of comparison operators. So every type of comparison operator that you use here, all of them will always return Boolean values. This greater equal to, not equal to, greater than, less than, greater than, equal to, not equal to. All of these comparison operators will always return true or false, and that true and false needs to be handled by this Boolean data type. Okay, so no matter which expression you use, the answer is always in form of true and false. Okay, so whether you use equal to, not equal to, and so on and so forth. So for example, we create a real world example. We use system. Using system, again, this is the first line of code that we need to write every single time. Because we are using W3Schools, the basic code is automatically written for you. But remember, if you are creating your own custom code, the first line we write is using system with a capital S. Then we provide it a namespace, block start, block close. This namespace defines like a project folder, like a package that which your code can belong to. So a package can have a multiple classes that belong to a same application. So for example, if you're building a single software, you have that package for that software, and all multiple classes and data belong to that one single software name. Understand? So we create that namespace here. Then we create a class. By default, every W3School example creates the class with the program, and it saves it with the program so that it can run it. But if you're creating your own custom code, you basically will use anything. So for example, if I have this code, and if I use, for example, VS Code online editor, or you can use VS Code from your own system. Let me create a new file. Oops, this one, sorry. Let's just create a new file and create a text file, Control V. So now I have this code here. Okay, so even if I'm using, I will still be using system. Using system, this is basically allowing, or like it's an importing the package. Then my application I can change to, for example, Dr. Zishan CS. So that means that all of my code will now have this particular project representation. So then I will create class, and I can change the program name to, for example, um, what should I name? Okay, bool type. Okay, so this class becomes my bool type. So when I save this code, Control S, I go here and I will save this as bool. Usually it's always recommended to use the same name as the class name. So whatever name you've written here as a class, use the same as a class. .cs extension is there, and we save the code. Okay, so you can change the class name to whatever class name you want. Usually we define the class name which reflects the purpose of your code. So in this case, for example, I'm just going for Boolean type explanations. So I've written it a Boolean type. Namespace, we usually give it a project name. Technically, if I'm working, or for example, in this case, if I'll create 10 different examples, I will keep the namespace same for all of them. So they are in one single folder, they belong to one single namespace, makes things a lot easier. Okay, and then class name representing the function of a class. Then we do integer age is equals to 25, integer voting age is equals to 18. We say control dot write ln, my age is greater than voting age. Okay, now we are using a Boolean expression to evaluate a certain condition. If returns true, meaning your age is greater than you're 25 years old, it will return true for us because age is 25, and it's going to check, hey, is my age, the variable that we are using here, has 25 value. So this 25 value will be represented here is greater than the voting age, which is actually 18. Okay, and then if that is the case, it's going to return true for us. So this becomes a Boolean expression that we tend to use. Okay, so this is what exactly this is trying to do. So we use such kind of Boolean expressions to determine certain condition. If the condition is true, it needs to do something. If the condition is false, it needs to do something else. And this is more reflected primarily in developing the proper logic, which we call decision making. Okay, so here's what a decision making looks like. So we can come here and try your self code. And now again, we are using namespace. Again, if I'm going to write it myself, so I, for example, come here, I create a new file. I can say, listen, I want a new file, new text file. Okay, and then I'm going to say using SYS system, making sure I write this code every single time. Then I'm going to say, listen, this is because this is what exactly it's doing. So you can copy paste it, or usually that's why we sometimes ignore it. But this is what every code needs to have. Then we say namespace, and we provided a particular namespace. So I'm going to use the same thing. So I'm going to say namespace, and then I'm going to say my namespace. Okay, so now this means that both of my code basically belong to the same namespace. Okay, then we start with a block, end with a block. So this namespace means that this entire code can belong to a one single namespace. Also meaning that you can write multiple namespaces or have this multiple blocks of code in a single file. Not recommended though, but you can use that. For example, now let's create a class age, or in fact we can say voting age. Okay, block start, block close. Again, block represents a set of code, number of lines of instructions, number of lines of code. So, or generally we say block of code. So this bracket start bracket represents a block, meaning that whatever we write inside this block now belongs to this particular block. Okay, so we said class voting age becomes my voting age. Now we write static, we say void, void, and we write main, and then we use string argument square brackets, again block start, block close. So this is a method just like this one. We public static void main string arguments. We wrote the same thing here. Okay, this is again a variable name, arguments belonging to an array of a type string. We have not discussed arrays yet, so don't worry about that. Declaring a main method is essential because this will tell that when I run this code, the first line of point of executing the code starts from the main method. And this is like a default thing. So that's why we use main. Void again means that this, when it executes, it will not return anything, will not give us a reply. And static is because I can use this method without creating an object of this voting class. Once we do that, control that. Now we say, okay, what we were talking about? Yes, integer age. So we were trying to do this thing. So let me copy this code, and let's be a little bit lazy and come back here. That better. Okay, so now what we said, integer age is equals to 25. Okay, integer voting age is equals to 18. We use the same variable, and we use something called if my age is greater than voting age. This is what we say. Now this is a comparison expression, but this comparison expression is provided passed to something called if. This if will evaluate if the condition is true. If this expression returns true to me, it will make a decision to execute this line of code. Okay, and the rest is completely ignored. However, if the decision is false, if my age is, for example, 5 years, so now the condition is my age is greater than equal to voting age. Am I bigger, elder than 18? Because I'm 5, it returns false. Because it returns false, this line of code is ignored, and the control of if goes to this else. And now only this line of code is executed. This is what we call decision making, and this is now we're going to understand a little bit more in depth of how this if else is working. Before I go, if you want to work on this, you need to save this code with the same class name. So again, I press Control S, come back here, and I'm going to say voting age.cs. So making sure everything is saved as .cs extension for the JavaScript C# file, and we give it the class name, that name of we have written here. You can give a different name, but it's always recommended to use the same name. And then you save this code and you execute it. This is an online VS Code editor. Actually does not support what we call C# online. So if you want to use that extension, come here and just type in C#, install VS Code on your systems, and you will get this C# development kit. You need to install that. Because I'm using an online editor, it says it's not supported for that, apparently, unfortunately. But that means we cannot execute the C# code on this editor. However, hopefully in future they would be able to do that. So if you are using VS Code on your systems for testing, just install this extension, extension, and download .NET on Windows. Should not be a problem. Okay. So let's talk more about this if-else things now and understand how this logic is working.
All right. So this was C# math class, string, and Booleans. Now in next class, we're going to talk more about if-else. So today, the end of day 5, I hope you have learned many things already. Tomorrow, day 6, we're going to talk more about if-else, and we're going to understand how we actually create logic and logical decisions in our program. Okay, so my name is Dr. Shan Buddy. Don't forget to subscribe. See you tomorrow.